Hello, everyone. Can you hear me? Welcome back to Managing of Change. Can you all hear me? Yes? No? Okay, thank you, Eileen. Thank you, Liu Gang. Thank you, Xin Yu. Thank you, Boyan, Su Chi, Chia, and so on, the rest of you. I know it's a huge class and people are still streaming in. Now, before I start, okay, there is a gentleman who is coming in to explain to you about, I think, an employability seminar. His name is Darren. He's going to just take a few minutes to talk to you. And then once he's done, I will take over. Okay, so Darren, over to you, Darren. I'll just switch off my mic until you finish. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Morgan. Okay, sorry everyone, just give me 1 minute. I'm trying to open the slides.
Give a few more minutes for Darren. Yeah, he's sharing the screen. Okay.
Can all of you see my screen?
I can see your screen, Darren, so it should be okay.
All right, thank you so much. All right, so I'll just start the sharing right now. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Darren. I'm actually from the Employability and Student Affairs Office. So today I'm actually here to share with you about this interesting, very exciting event that's going to happen at the end of this month. All right, on the 23rd and 24th of August. It's actually our first ever career seminar, and we are actually holding it in conjunction with the Employment and Employability Institute, which is E2I. All right. So this entire event, what it does, what is it for, is to actually help all of you be prepared for your career. And when the time comes for career fair, or when it comes times for you to look for your job, you'll be ready. Okay. So just to do a quick explanation of the event, it's going to be a 2 days event, like I mentioned. On day 1, 23rd August, we are only limiting this to the first 200 signups. All right. The day 1 will all be virtual events. There'll be 2 events happening. One is the career workshop, okay, called Stand Out and Get Hired. It's going to be conducted by Mr. Andre Chong from E2I. He's an associate trainer there with many, many years of training experiences. He's basically going to teach you all about, what it's like to stand out among the crowd, be the one resume that is better than everyone else's, the one that other interviewers will notice first, things like that. Okay, so we'll teach you about personal branding, how you can really stand out. Okay, and then at 6:30 p.m. on 23rd August, we also have a HR industry talk by Mr. Lee Jin Hui, who is the Deputy CEO of E2I. He is also a HR practitioner for many, many years already, and he has a wealth of HR experiences. So for those of you who are keen to join the HR industry, or you want to find out, what is it, what are some of the answers that HR people like to ask, questions to the answers of HR people like to ask during interviews, this is the industry talk you can sign up for. Okay? And on day 2, 34th August, this is only limited to the first 80 sign up because this will be held on campus. All right, so we still have to adhere to some safety measures. So only 80 students will be allowed on the day itself. Okay, so at 3 p.m., we actually have a networking with employers. So this one is essentially like a sort of like a mini career fair. We are actually going to have around 6 to 8 companies that will be here, all right, to meet you guys, talk to you, find out more about your interests, what you're looking for in a career. And if somehow they feel that, you know, you are potentially a hire for their company, they will take down your contact. They will contact you for further interview opportunities. So don't miss out on this. Okay. And then at 5:30 p.m. itself, we actually have a group career coaching. So this is where coaches from Kaplan and E2I will be coming together to teach all of you to answer basically any heart-burning career-related questions that you might have. Okay, so in total, there will be 4 events over here, but you do not have to come for all 4 when you sign up. Okay, so these 4 are all separate events that you can sign up for by itself. So if you want to come for 1, 2, 3, or all 4 of it, it's up to you. Okay, so one of the good things about coming for these events is that there will be a lot of exciting prize to give away because this is our first ever career seminar. So we're going all out. Okay, so we're actually going to give away quite a bit of exciting prizes like Razer gaming keyboards, the Belkin earbuds, and also a lot of capital and vouchers. Okay, so this is your opportunity. If you want to sign up for this event, you can go to this link. I will type it in the chat box later on. All right, if not, what you all need to know is log into your Careers Hub. Okay, so just to very quickly run through, you need to sign into your Careers Hub, all right, using your student email and password. Once you're inside, go to the events tab, just search for career seminar, or you can just scroll down to 23rd August, 24th August. You will see all these 4 events over there. Okay, so you can click into each 4, whichever you're interested to go for, and then go inside and click attend. Okay, if you want to attend all 4, please remember to click attend for all 4 events. If you're only interested in 1 or 2, click attend for that 1 or 2. All right, so yeah, that's it for my sharing. So if any of you have any questions, I will still be here for the next 1 or 2 minutes, but I don't want to take up too much time because you guys do have class to go to. So yeah, I'll share the links that you all need for the signups. If you have any questions, I'll leave our email in the chat box as well, so you all can email us. Okay. Yep, that's all. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you, Darren. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to share my screen. So what I had earlier. Okay, let me take my screen. Okay, right. Okay, so Darren has given that, you know, the link for you to register. Just take a note of that. I mean, I would advise you to go and sign up for this. And he's also given an email address in case you have any queries. Okay, all right, let's get back to our lesson. Let's get started. So today what I'm going to talk about is I'm going to talk about implementing change. So this is the 5th lesson. So what we are doing is the 5th lesson. Now, I spoke about a few things. I spoke about developing an implementation plan yesterday. So let me just pull my, okay, I'll stop sharing this and I'll share my notes. So what we did yesterday was we spoke about developing an implementation plan. Basically, this is what we spoke about a good part of yesterday. Now, when you plan for change, okay, when you plan for change, now there are a couple of things which will influence the implementation plan. 2 factors will influence the change plan. Now, one of it, I spoke about it in great detail yesterday, and that is what we called the clarity of the desired end state. And I don't want to spend too much time on it, but this is one of the things that we spoke about yesterday. Are you clear about what you want to achieve? If you're very clear, you have to take certain steps. But sometimes that change you want to make may take a long time. You do not know where you are going. You do not know where you're heading. So under those conditions, you take tentative steps and you monitor exactly like what your career is. You are doing assignments, you're taking exams to get a degree. The desired end state is very clear, getting the degree. But beyond that, getting a job. What kind of job? Which industry? What would you like to do? Now, those kind of things are not very clear. So when you undertake such a journey, you have to take small steps, monitor, take action accordingly, and then move on. This is what I mean by clarity of the desired end state. Now, one thing I did not cover yesterday is talking about some of those qualitative issues. Qualitative issues such as participants, perceptions of the proposed change. Of its appeal. Does it appeal to them? Or maybe the likelihood that it will happen. So, for example, if you know the clarity of the end state, if you know this is what will happen, if you do your assignments, you pass your exams, you will get your degree. The desired state is very clear. Now, a lot of your perceptions would be, yes, I would like to get that. But beyond that, getting a job. Now, it can be very frustrating. This is the reason why Darren was giving this talk. They wrote to me and Darren came and gave the talk. The people to advise you. So maybe the first step you have to do is go to these seminars, go to these sessions, see what people have to say, pick their brains, ask them questions, equip yourself with a little bit of skills, speaking skills, conversational skills to help you in your interview, preparing of the resume, a lot of things to be done. It is change. But it can be frustrating if you do not do it well, if you don't get feedback, it can be very frustrating. So what I will talk about, at least for the first part, or at least for the first quarter part of the lesson, is I'll talk about the participants' perceptions of the proposed change. In general, there are four scenarios. There are four scenarios identified by a person called DiBella. And he did this in 2007. So four scenarios identified by Bella regarding change, participants, perceptions. Change, participants, perceptions. Yeah, I think change, participants, perceptions of appeal and likelihood of the change occurring. All right, and because of this, because you are trying to change an organization, you are trying to change people. Now, these perceptions of appeal and likelihood of the change occurring can affect how you implement the change. It can affect how you as a change manager responds. So we need to understand this. So I will talk about these perceptions, these four scenarios, and what we can do about it. And after that, we'll look at the kind of changes we can make. Yesterday, I gave you a plan, strategies. Today, the kind of changes, tactical interventions. Okay, they use all these fancy terms, yeah? But what you're trying to do is you're trying to make a change in the organization. So before I preempt you what those changes are, those interventions are going to be, let's talk about these scenarios. So the first scenario is participants' view change as desirable and consider it inevitable. What does this mean? Desirable, we all understand. Yes, I like the change. It's good for the organization. It's good for us. It's good for me because we will be learning new things. We'll be doing new things. That is desirable. But if it is inevitable, what does it mean? It means that you cannot stop this change. This change maybe is from outside. Technologies change. Nowadays, everyone uses email, but we still believe in fax machines. That means your company hasn't changed. And that causes problems because if people want to communicate with you over email and you say, oh, we don't have an email address, how do you communicate? Fax machines, but we don't use fax machines anymore. So it is inevitable. You do it. You take care, you make those things happen. So in this case, if the participants view the change as desirable and consider it inevitable, what the change manager must do is, in this case, the change manager must expedite the change. That means get it done. Don't waste time. It is inevitable. If you don't do it, you will disappear just like dinosaurs. You have to do it. Why do you expedite? Because people find it desirable and inevitable. There will be little resistance to the implementation plan. Okay, detailing so the implementation plan would be accepted. So this is why we need to make the change as quickly as possible. And I've been through some of these things. Sometimes I feel that, we need to keep up to date. I remember when email first came out and we were trying to implement this in a company. And these were all graduates. So I was introduced to this email or the internet by a friend of mine. He got, you don't use a floppy disk anymore. He got a 3-inch floppy disk and he said, Morgan, load this thing onto your computer, which I did. And he says, and we started communicating with each other. And I said, this is neat. I said, this is great. And he said, yeah, we can get everyone to do this. And we tried and we had great difficulty simply because people were resistant to what we were trying to do. They were not used to it. But if people find it desirable and they find it, if you talk to them, hey, this you have to change. And if they're accepting of this, implement it as quickly as possible. All right? So this is a good position to be in. A second scenario is number 2. The second scenario, participants view the change as desirable, but are not convinced that it will happen. For whatever reasons. They may have seen things happening before and nothing came out of it. They may see people talking about it and nothing came out of it. So they may become a little bit cynical. Maybe they feel that, it's a complete waste of time. So they may think, yeah, the change is good, but who's going to make the change? Or maybe it's just the organizational culture, is a top-down approach. Maybe those people at the top, they don't change, but they expect us to change. This kind of things can be happening. All right. I mean, I was reading an article this morning. It's about this 4-day week. So there are a couple of countries, I think the UK, I think another one is, I think maybe Iceland. I think these two countries are now experimenting with a 4-day week. So you work for 4 days and you get 3 days off. That means Friday, Saturday, Sunday is off. And they're looking at the results. But then I was looking at the newspaper article yesterday in Singapore, and it was mentioned that in Singapore, you have to be careful. And I was wondering, careful about what? Causes lots of problems. I'm wondering what kind of problems. So people at the top who are responsible for this execution of this 4-day week, they don't want a 4-day week. They think productivity will suffer. But the results from the UK and Iceland shows productivity did not suffer with a 4-day week. They've just become very efficient in doing things. This is change. This is change driven bottom up. So when you look at something like this, when the change is desirable, but you're not convinced it will happen, and a lot of Singaporeans feel that it will not happen, what the change manager needs to do is the change manager needs to develop a plan that will encourage and empower others by acting in ways that will shift their perceptions and increase their conviction that the change will be accomplished. The change manager must do that. All right? So there are a couple of points here. First, you got to encourage and empower others. Second, by acting in ways that will shift their perceptions and, well, 3 things here, and increase your conviction that the change will be accomplished. This is what you have to do. Now, this can be done by, so can be achieved by developing a change plan that focuses on achieving small victories. What do I mean by small victories? There are certain things which we can do which will give us self-confidence, things which are easy to do. All right? For example, maybe you want to get knowledge of this managing of change. Maybe you can take a quiz. Maybe you can try to understand. This is what we call the low-hanging fruit, things which we can be easily done on your own. And once you have done it, you have more confidence. You go on to the more difficult tasks. Difficult tasks like doing the assignment, because you have the confidence. So this is what I mean by small victories. Do the easy things first. Don't go and do the difficult things. Do the easy things. So the first thing you have to do is address these small victories. And then once you've done this, once people are sure, hey, I can do this, this will help to secure early success that will build credibility. Right? That is number two. It's a little bit more difficult than the first one. First one, people are favorable. They know that the environment, because of the environment, we have to change. Second one's a little bit difficult. They think change is good, but they're not convinced it will happen, maybe because of past experiences. All right? That is the second one. The third scenario is participants do not view change as desirable, but anticipate that it is inevitable. They know you have to change, all right? But they do not think the change is good for them. And this happens to a lot of us. You see changes taking place in the environment. For example, the onslaught of technology. And you find a lot of old people saying, look, I'm too old for this. I prefer to do the old way. Do not think it's only old people who do that. When you become older, you will feel the same way. Do not think, all change you will gladly accept. You will also reject a lot of these changes that are taking place in the environment, right? It's not only old people, even young people, when they're asked to move away from their comfort zones and do something different. For me, when I left the country to go and work overseas, it was a challenge. Why? People didn't speak English. Food was different. Culture was different. Value systems were different. But over time, I accepted that because I wanted to work overseas. And I knew that it is inevitable. Singapore is too small an economy to find a good job. I have to be looking at the world. The world is my oyster. But initially, it was not desirable. Everyone was asking me, are you sure you want to go to those dangerous places? Even now, my sister, my friends, who live in Singapore, they always tell me, are you going there? Isn't it dangerous? I said, not really. But this is how people look at things. They do not view the change as desirable. All right? Now, this is when resistance to change is expected. Okay, so this fits the condition where resistance to change is to be expected. Remember, people don't want to change. They don't think it's desirable. So what you need to do is, when there is resistance to be expected, participants will strive to alter conditions and make it less inevitable by reducing their engagement. Okay, so this is what they would do. They would say things like, I'm too busy, I've got these things to take care of. You will hear this kind of excuses when you're trying to make a change. And they say, I'm busy with other things. I don't have the time to take care of this thing. It's always time. So what you need to do then is, as a change manager must or need to focus attention on reframing and making the change not desirable, but more desirable. You don't do it, sorry. If you can do this, hey, you will get a bonus at the end of the year. Right? Now, to do this, you have to look at the features of the change. Look at the features of the change that can be modified to make it more appealing. Right? And one of the things that starts with this, to make it more appealing, is to make sure that you have a good vision. So the change manager will need to communicate a compelling vision, something that everyone likes to follow. This is what you need to do. Okay? Manager needs Duan Lin Ji. Your mic is on, Duan Lin Ji. I'm muting you right now. Okay? Okay, so this is what you have to do. You have to come up with a vision that people believe in. This is when people find it desirable, but they think, they do not view it desirable, but they know it is inevitable. Changes will take place. All right? So we are moving from the easy one, and as we move on, it becomes more and more difficult. Okay, 2, desirable but not convinced it will happen. This is much more difficult than the first one, but this is a little bit easier than the third one. The third one, people think, they do not view it as desirable, but they think it is inevitable. The last one is the most difficult. Last one, number 4, participants of the change perceive the change to be undesirable and unlikely to happen. Okay? And usually I see this amongst senior managers, especially if they are in a comfortable position. All right? They have reached that position in senior management based on what they have done. And they think, they can do almost everything. They can foresee what is happening. And whatever change is going to happen, they may not like it because it threatens their position. And they think I can manage it, it will not happen. I have seen senior managers, even my own bosses, when I was a young engineer, when I spoke to them, I will ask questions like, do you think this will happen? And the higher up you go, the least likely they think it will happen because it affects their position. It affects their comfort zone. So here, there is no clear incentive for participants to engage in the change. Why? Why bother? I don't think it will happen. I don't like it. So they do not like to do this. And if you ask them to do it, they may challenge you. They may be openly defiant. Okay, so they may be openly defiant. Defiant means they may not want to do it and act in ways that will test the change manager's credibility. They will challenge you. because they don't believe in it. So what you need to do is, again, DeBella kind of recommends that you need to modify the change. So DeBella recommends that the change manager modifies the change to make it more appealing or even retrenchment. That means, you're telling them that if you don't do this, you may be out of a job, so retrenchment, or altering the environment to make it seem more inevitable. So altering the environment is, maybe you can highlight what competitors are doing, how they're capturing market share. You're looking outside of the company to convince these people. All right? Another way of altering the environment is to get people from outside who will come in and talk about the process, telling these change participants, look, if you don't do this, it could be a government servant, it could be an academic, or it could be kind of a process where everyone gets involved and they get a chance to ask questions from someone outside the company. And these people, who come and advocate this change, could look at change in more positive terms and remove some of the most resistant participants from the scene. And this is where stakeholder management becomes important. So look at stakeholder management on how to do this. Remember that diagram I showed you? This is what you have. So these are the things that you need to consider to change people's, perceptions of change. So DeBella identified 4, and this 4, you will find it in, not all in one. There may be certain groups who may form a majority in one of this, and then there could be other groups who might be a small minority. So you have to look at this. Okay? So anyone has any questions? Anyone want to ask me any questions on this perceptions? Or is it all clear? By Ru, by Chi, Chen Shen Hang, Chen Sen Yu, Chen Yi Nan, Duan Yu Ya, Fang Kun, Fu Meng Di. Anyone has any questions on perceptions, on how to change people's perceptions? Anyone? All no questions? All very clear? No one, no questions? Even those students who come, okay, Somarita, okay, thank you, Somarita. Appreciate your response. I was wondering whether you can hear me or not hear me. Appreciate your response, Somarita. Okay? Okay. Now, a lot of the things I'm talking about today, the slides will give you some very basic stuff. But those stuff in the slides, especially lecture 5 or day 5, a lot of this I have discussed. So here I'm going a little bit deeper. So what I've stated here, you will not find in the slides, but I will post all these notes onto the Brightspace. The other things I'm going to talk about, I think maybe somewhere is in the slides, but I'm not sure where. But it is the type of interventions or changes to be made. So we're now talking about tactical issues. Now, these tactical issues are what we call changes to be made. And these changes to be made, they are known as interventions. All right. So now I'm going to talk about interventions. This one I've kind of explained to you yesterday a little bit, not in great detail, but a little bit. And what are interventions? When you go in and you make a change. So an intervention is a set of sequence, planned action to change entity within the organization or the organization itself. An entity could be a department. So you need not only always look at the organization, you can change a department if you feel that the department is not performing. So when you take this planned action, so interventions are sequence planned action. This is the term they use. So this sequence planned action, they are known by the name of interventions. And the purpose of taking an intervention is it is intended, interventions are intended to help the organization, if you're changing the organization, or its entity, if you're changing the entity, to increase its effectiveness. Effectiveness could be anything. Maybe you want to improve motivation, you want to improve profitability. So I just use a general term like effectiveness. It can be anything. All right? So that is intervention. Now there are 4 main types of intervention. There are 4 main types of interventions. Now, these 4 main types of interventions, I'll list them down for you, and then I'll talk about them. But I'm going to put some things in bracket. And then at the end of today, we will see how to make the change. So the first intervention is known as human process intervention. Now, in human process interventions, what you're doing is you are changing the process in the organization. A process could be motivation process. It could be the hiring process. It could be the interview process. It could be the promotion process. So it covers a lot of areas, but these are human process interventions where you're looking at the processes which will affect the employees or any stakeholder. Human process intervention. Then you have what is known as a techno-structural intervention. Techno-structural interventions changes the structure of the organization. Maybe through implementation of technology, but maybe it may not even be the implementation of technology. It could be your restructuring. Rather than having a hierarchical structure, you may try to make it flat. You may remove different layers. That is changing the structure. And changing the structure will change a lot of things. Things like decision-making. So it can impact decision-making process. Now we are going to the top one. So a lot of this will affect each other. A third type of intervention is known as human resource intervention. Now here we are not talking about the process. You're talking about human beings or the employees as a resource. When you start bringing in people, or when you change the kind of people you employ, or maybe you are equipping your employees with certain skill set, Now, those kind of things are human resource intervention. Now, this can change the process, but it can also change the structure, right? So human resource intervention can change either of this. Then you have strategic intervention. Strategic intervention, now this is difficult to do. It changes the organizational culture. This is difficult to do. You're changing how people think. And when you change the way they think, it will change everything else. It will change the process, it may change the structure. So strategic intervention is a major change. When you change the strategy, everything else in the organization must change. Processes, structure, everything must change. Okay, everyone? Anyone has any questions on this before I talk about each one of them? So the first one I'm going to talk about is, I'm going to talk about human process intervention. So you can decide looking at your case, your assignment, what intervention must take place. So this is human process intervention. This is the first one we will talk about. Now, before I talk about it, anyone has any questions? Is it all clear? Do you have questions on this? Anyone? All okay? All clear. Thank you very much. Okay, let's proceed. Let's look at human process intervention. Human process intervention, what it does is it focuses on people and the processes by which they accomplish organizational goals. Okay, by which they achieve organizational goals. Now, what are these processes? Let's look at the processes first. The processes can involve, maybe you see a communication problem in the organization. So it could be the communication process. How do people communicate in the organizations? Or maybe problems don't get solved. Then you may have to look at the problem-solving process. How do people solve problems? Or people take a long time to make decisions. So you have to look at the decision-making process. Or maybe even leadership. So there are a few examples I'm giving you here, yeah? So there could be many more, depending on what the problem is. So all these are processes where people get involved. You have to work with people to communicate, to solve problems, to make decisions, and also to lead people. So when looking at these processes, what you may have to do is you may have to look at how information is shared. Because sharing information has a potential impact on this organizational processes. Sometimes when I see something is not being done well, whether it's at home or whether it's in the office, I'll tell them, maybe try doing it this way. Why don't you do it this way? It's just sharing information, giving them information. I do it maybe based on my experiences or what I have seen. And then when you get them to do this, when you share this information, Now, there's always differences between people. Some people may understand some of these things quickly, others may be a little bit slow. I'm a little bit slow. I have to think about it before I implement anything. But as long as you understand that people are different, you can confronting, and working through differences between people who must work together can enhance collaboration in the processes. This is what we do, right? So when people collaborate, people participate. Participation in this processes can lead to increased commitment. All right? Now, to reach this stage, to find out whether there's a problem, whether it's communication, problem solving, leadership, decision making, or anything, hiring process, interview process, what you need to do is those people who are involved in it. I said participation in these processes. You must get these people, you have to work through with them. But what you need to do is you need to involve individuals or groups to discuss diagnosis. Diagnosis meaning you have found a problem, you're looking at the data, so we are looking at diagnostic, not diagnosis, but diagnostic data, and plan action step. Plan action steps. All right? Okay? So like what needs to be done? So as a change manager, you have to help manage relations between individual and groups. You have to manage this. Sorry, it should be A here. You have to manage this. And this is where, things like how to work in teams, how to work between groups, all these skill sets. You can take courses like team development, intergroup interventions, all this becomes useful. So focus, okay, focus on team development and intergroup interventions for improving group relations and interface between the groups. So you are the change manager. You must be observant of what you are doing. All right? So what you have to do is, in doing all this, you must be observant. So you have to seek feedback. So survey feedback and possibly involve coaching and counseling. So counseling is also important. And by the way, I have a certificate in counseling. Yeah, I took counseling, talking to people, how to talk to people, how to advise them. These are all important skills as a change manager. So all this is human process intervention. Is everyone clear? Anyone wants to ask me any questions before I go on to the next one? Any questions, anyone? Is it all very clear? Is it all clear, everyone? Anyone wants to ask me? All clear. Otsubo is all clear. Okay. Anybody else? Any questions? All okay? So Marita is all clear. All right, let's proceed. I believe Otsubo and Somarita is speaking for the rest of the class. Now, usually I would follow the steps here, yeah? Usually I'll follow human process, techno-structural, human resource, and strategic. I've explained the first one, but I thought I'll just put human resource intervention after human process, because people always get confused between human resource intervention and human process. So let's look at human resource intervention first, and then we will take a break. And when we come back, we will do techno-structural and strategic intervention. And after that, I'll just give you something for you to think about on how you can make the change. Just a discussion. I've had some of these discussions with some of the students in class, face-to-face. I mentioned some of those things, but I want to share this with everyone because I was surveying the feedback from what you know about the assignments, what you do not know about the assignments, and I'll talk about it at the end on how you can intervene. And then you can go and look at your assignment on how to do it. Okay, so let's talk about, human resource intervention. The only reason I'm putting this before the others is because people always get confused with this one and the other one. So with the first one, and that's the reason why I'm doing it first, so we can make a comparison between this. Here, we are looking at the processes. Here, we're looking at other things. We are looking at human resources. We are looking at personnel practices. Okay, so when we look at this human resource interventions, the focus is on the practices of human resources, can be the department or can be the organization itself, okay, of human resources, the department, or of the organization. How do you deal with human resources in the organization? This is what we are looking at. All right. So in this case, what you're looking at is, okay, how do you select the kind of people you want in your organization? Selection of potential employees. Yeah, you can always argue interview is a process. That is communication process. But what is the criteria that you choose to select the employee? This is important, you know. Why? You want to employ people who think like how the organization thinks. For me, when I applied for a job, my first job, what my boss was looking for is, would I be open to working in different countries? Not comfortable places, You live in guest houses, you eat shitty food, you would be bitten by mosquitoes. Worse, you might be bitten by snakes. All this can happen. But are you open to that? If you're compensated handsomely. And I was exposed to all that. I used to go to places where I used to get sick half the time. I used to go to places where I have to pack my own food. There was one time I brought a couple of engineers to this site. And the first thing they saw on the first day was snakes in their bedroom. They cried. And I said, this is life. If you want to do projects, this is life. Are you able to do it? I said, if you can't take this, I said, I can send you back. But I'm not going to bring you for projects anymore. That means you would not be compensated handsomely. So what is the criteria for selection of potential employees? How are you going to train them? Their training and development. My company, when they first employed me, they sent me for training for 1 year. And if you think university is bad, wait till you go for the training I went to. Assignments every week. So Saturdays, Sundays, I was spending my time doing assignments. Evenings, I had no time to do anything. I was just learning because next day is a test. We used to have 3 tests in a week, and I had to do that for 1 year. That was my training and development. Do you teach them how to set goals? Setting goals, goal setting. How about performance appraisal? On what criteria do you appraise your employees? Incentives that you give them. Promotion. On what criteria do you promote them? Career development. And so on. Human resources play an important role. And all these are their focus. Right? So when you look at this, when you look at something like training, so I can go into training and I can intervene. So training interventions, so within human resource interventions, you can have many different types of interventions. So here I'm talking about training interventions. Training interventions are used to achieve alignment between competencies, okay, that means the skills that you have of organizational members and other elements of the organization. What I'm trying to tell you here is, okay, if you are trained to do a job, do you understand how or what you do impacts other parts of the organization? I'm an engineer. So when I go and do my job, okay, I'm a cost center. People have to pay me to go and do a certain work. I finish the job. Now, if I don't do the job well, that means my training did not equip me to do the job well. Customer will be dissatisfied. When he's dissatisfied, he doesn't order anything from marketing. Marketing loses its sales, affects the sales department. And it has a knock-on effect on everything else in the organization, affects finance. So that training is important. And my company, my first company, sent me for a 1 year training to make sure that I know what I'm doing. Okay? Then, when you do performance management interventions, you focus on the goals you set, goal setting, performance appraisal, and reward systems. And what does this do? When you start looking at this contribute to organizational effectiveness, by aligning members' work behavior with business practices. That means whatever you do in the company, or perhaps even outside of the company, it improves organizational effectiveness. Okay? For example, surfing, shopping on the internet when you are in the company. That's not good work behavior. It is not aligned with business practices. So if I walk into an organization, I'm a supplier or I'm a client, when I see the employees of these organizations surfing the web, doing shopping, booking, maybe travel.com, booking.com, booking flights, hotel, what do you think I will think of this organization? Maybe these people are not focused. So when you have performance management interventions, you're looking at what kind of goals people set for themselves. You look at how people should be assessed, performance appraisal, and how they should be rewarded. This is what you should be looking at. You can also have career planning and development interventions. And what does this do? They help employees manage their careers. People want to grow, but maybe some people don't want the responsibilities. My wife is a purchaser in an organization, but she doesn't want to get promoted. She said, if I get promoted, I've got lots of work to do and I don't have time. I want to enjoy my life. So she's happy where she is. She's happy with the salary she's got. She doesn't want more responsibility, more salary. But there are people who want to rise up in their organization. You got to help them. You got to tell them, this is what you need to do to reach this position. Not because you are in the organization for 10 years, you should be promoted. Can you do these things? And prepare them for uncertainties. Things may not always be smooth sailing, yeah? But you need to manage this for them. You got to teach them. All right? You can have workforce diversity intervention. So you can see in human resource intervention, there's so many different types of intervention. Workforce diversity interventions respond to different needs, preferences, and expectations of various group of employees who bring different resources and perspectives to the organization. I'm a great believer in diversity. I think an organization should have many different groups of people from different parts of the world, maybe even gender preferences, young and old. They should not be homogeneous. They should not all be of one culture. They should not all be of one race, age, or gender. There should be a mix and match of different groups of people. from different parts of the world. I'm always for that. Why? Because you would look at a problem differently. If you come from different parts of the world, if you have different perspectives, you will look at a problem differently. But that's what I want. When I work in an organization, I want different perspectives. I don't want people to agree with me. But when I walk into an organization and I see everybody is the same, I think that's not a good thing, right? But workforce diversity must be managed. I'll give you an example. I have a client. I won't name the client for obvious reasons. It's a big MNC. And once, very recently, I went to their office for a meeting. The HR director wanted to meet me. He just wanted to have a discussion with me, a nice guy. Okay, he was from Taiwan, but he was a really nice guy. I enjoyed talking to him. And as I was walking to his office, or at least when I was going up in the lift to his office, I saw employees from his organization. It's a big organization. They occupy a building and they were getting off in different floors. So I saw Korean employees of the organization. I saw Chinese employees of the organization. I saw Singaporean employees of the organization. And what were they doing? They were just talking in their own languages. The Koreans were talking amongst the Koreans in their own language. The Chinese nationals were talking with their fellow colleagues in their own language. The Singaporeans were talking, and of course, in Singlish. And I saw this. And I also saw Indian nationals there talking to their counterparts in Hindi. So when I went up to the office, I didn't know what to expect. He just called me up. He said, let's go out for lunch. I want to have a chat with you. And when I went up, he took me out for lunch and he said, Morgan, what advice would you give? He said, I have a very diverse workforce. HR director. Okay, so he understood his people. But I cannot get them to think in one way. I said, I understand. And I told him about what I'm telling you. I came up in the lift and I saw everyone talking in their own language. So he said, what do you advise that I should do? Just tell them, when you are in this organization, English is mandatory. You have to speak English. You cannot speak any other language. Put it in the performance appraisal, I said. And he looked at me and he said, that's a great idea. Because you can only unite people, you can unify people when they all speak in one language. And you might be surprised to hear that. Countries like Germany, some of the bigger companies like Adidas, and there are also certain Japanese companies I've heard, when you go to the office, you might think they might be speaking in German or Japanese if it's a Japanese company. They have asked their employees to talk in English. Why? Because your customers speak in English. They're not speaking your language. And if you want to learn to become proficient in your customer's language, you better learn to speak English. That's an important point. This is how you manage workforce diversity. All right? I'll do one more, and then I'll open the floor to questions, and then we'll take a break. The last one I like to do when we talk about human resource intervention is employee wellness and stress management interventions. And what this is supposed to do is, this is supposed to contribute or that promote the well-being of organizational members and contribute to the development of a productive workforce. People need to be healthy to be productive. If you're not healthy, you are never productive. And how do you become healthy? You got to maintain a certain well-being, take care of yourself, don't work so hard, manage your stress levels. All these are interventions, and there are companies who actively promote this. You got to take care of your employees. Don't make them work so hard. Don't make them come over the weekend. If I see someone working after 6 o'clock, I always ask them this question: why are you, in the office? Could only be for two reasons. One, I give you too much work, which I think is not true, because I don't give you too much work. I just give you enough for a day. Then that brings me to the second reason. The second reason is you're just not efficient. You're just not productive. So if you have to stay after 6 o'clock to finish your work, I just give you enough to finish in a day. That means you're not being efficient. And that is always my reasoning. And when they hear me say this, they always pack up and leave. And they make sure that they finish their work before 6 instead of surfing the web or maybe even looking at their phone or talking to their boyfriend or girlfriend. Those are all not productive behavior. And this is what we mean when we talk about performance management interventions. All right? So next time I'm giving a lecture, and if you are on the phone chatting with your friend, think about this, because you are just not being efficient. This is human resource intervention. Now, this is a classroom environment. Now, if it's a work environment, if you're on the phone when I'm talking, I will tell you off. Okay? Anyone has any questions? Any questions, anyone? So Marita, Otsubo, Jifei, is everything clear? All clear. All right, good. Let's take a break. When we come back, we'll finish off two of the other interventions, and then I'll do something for you, which I hope will help you in analyzing your assignment. Just, related to what we are doing. I'm not taking over Rosa's job. I'm just trying to relate to what I'm doing to what you can do in the assignment. And then when Rosa comes in and explains to you about the assignment, you can put two and two together. But my way is the way I do it in practice. So what I do in practice, I teach you. And hopefully you can use it to the case study, right? So it's now about 4:30. So let's come back at 4:50. Is that okay, everyone? 4:50 p.m. would be good. Have a drink, okay? So see you all in a little while. I'm going to switch off the mic and I'll see you in about 20 minutes time. Hello, everyone. Are we back from our break? Can I start? Eileen, Jay-Fei, all okay? Otsubo, thank you very much. Zhang Boyan, thank you. Okay, so let us continue. We've got two more interventions to look at. And after that, I'll just work through an example to show you how I would go about doing it. A simple example to show you how these things can be applied. So the next one I'm looking at is techno-structural interventions. Again, there's a whole range of techno-structural interventions you can look at. But what these interventions do is they focus on the three areas of structure. Okay. The three areas being three areas of structure. We're talking about task methods. We're talking about job design. We're talking about job enrichment. All right, so these are the three areas of structure that we look at. Remember, techno-structural interventions meant to address issues in the structure. Now, these interventions are intended to affect content of work methods, division of labor, and of course, work, and employee involvement. Employees effectively involved at the workplace. This is employee involvement. And there are a few sets of interventions. We have one group of interventions that relate to the design of organizations. This includes downsizing, making the organization more nimble, and re-engineering, maybe the way people do their work. Now, the reason why you do this, okay, downsizing or re-engineering, is to provide flexibility in times of uncertainty. Okay, like what you're having right now, the pandemic, we went through a pandemic and a lot of organizations have to redesign themselves. I think even Kaplan is going through that. I hear about it from different groups of people, what they're doing. Okay, they are kind of re-engineering. Now they have like three departments. One department takes care of lecturers, one department takes care of the causes, university partners, and one looks at future causes. So there are different kinds of re-engineering going on in Kaplan because of uncertainties in the environment. Now, some other structural interventions, okay, structural interventions are designed to increase employee involvement. And why do you want to get employees involved? Because you want to enhance commitment and performance. So this could be maybe job enrichment, giving them a lot of things to do. So this could be a form of structural intervention. It can also may involve moving decision making closer to where the work is done. So if someone is doing the work, they should be able to make the decision rather than moving it upwards to managers seeking permission. They decide. All right. But to enable this, this requires authority. Does the person have the authority, information, knowledge, and skills to act effectively? Now, if this is the case, not only are you doing technostructural intervention, now you're also talking about training, which is human resource intervention. So there are two types of intervention you have to take place if you want to get people to make decisions on their own. So it's not as simple as I do this, everything will fall into place. You may have to apply a lot of different kinds of interventions to get the outcome that you need, which is you want to improve the performance of the organization, the individual, the teams, the entities, right? And then there are general interventions designed to improve quality of work, such as job enrichment and self-managed teams. Right? So this is again an interesting intervention. How do you improve quality of work? Maybe give them a little bit more to do, especially in production lines. Life can get pretty boring if you keep on doing the same thing over and over again. So you enlarge the job scope, and maybe they can see the purpose of what they are doing. Self-managed teams, you give teams tasks to do, and that task itself, can improve productivity. I've heard in the US, they are quite, self-managed teams are quite popular. So instead of having production line, you give teams to build a car so they can see the end result themselves. And this gives them a certain purpose. People want to see purpose in the work that they do. All right. And then there are interventions that create parallel structures that operate together with the formal organization. And this could be things like, such as project groups, or task force to address problems and find solutions. When the problems are something very special and you need a specialized team to look into it. So this is techno-structural interventions. Again, there is a wide range of interventions, just like the others. It's not like one will describe all of them. They come under a group, a category. But if you look deeper on what you want to do, you may have to come up with specific intervention. Okay? Anyone has any questions on this before I talk about the last intervention? Anyone, any questions? Jifei, Zhangqi, Meng-Chi Yu. Any questions? He Yi-Lin? All okay? No questions? Good. All right, so the last intervention that I'm going to talk about before I do an example is known as strategic interventions. This is not easy to do, okay? Strategic intervention is probably one of the most difficult because it's long-term. It takes a long time to see whether the strategy works or not. But when you look at strategic interventions, these interventions link the internal functioning of the firm or the company with the wider environment. That means you may look at how the company operates, and then you find that the company is not operating with what the wider environment expects it to do. Let me give you an example that I experienced today. You know, I have a couple of computers at home, and I have one computer. The problem is the battery, nothing else. The computer works well, the battery. So I wrote to the vendor. I don't want to name the vendor, but I wrote to the vendor and I said, look, I need a battery for my computer. And they came back with a quote. They said, okay, this is a quote for replacing the battery. It was quite expensive. You know, they said they'll send somebody to my house, you know, kind of a personalized service to fix the battery. And the quote was very expensive. And I've been waiting for 2 months. And then today, the vendor calls me up. And it's a big company, okay? So I don't want to mention the name of the company. It's a big company. So the vendor of this company calls me up and he says, sorry, you know, we have to cancel the quote. And I say, why do you have to cancel the quote? I'm willing to pay for it. And they said, because we don't make those products. We don't make that battery anymore. And I said, why didn't you tell me earlier? I've been waiting for 2 months, I said. As a customer, I expect you to come back. I mean, you didn't know that you stopped making the batteries. And then he became very defensive, and I just told him off. I said, look, I'm wasting my time with you, but I will never buy your product. A big company. I said, I will never buy your product, and I'll tell any of my customer not to buy your product. Because you said you've stopped making this battery 4 years ago, but when I bought this computer 4 years ago, why didn't you tell me that? This is what I mean. How the company operates is not aligned with the external environment. Customer needs this thing. Nothing wrong with the computer except the battery. And the battery is causing me lots of problems. I always have to plug it in. And all I need is a spare battery, and they don't offer this battery. So the aim of this strategic intervention is aim of these interventions is to align business strategy with the organizational culture, so people in the company know what they're thinking, you know, when they call up a client. So this is what I mean. It's not easy to change how people think. They just follow orders. Oh, we don't make the batteries, so we cannot service you. Well, why didn't you think about this in the first place? When I bought the product, would the customer be using it for more than 4 years? What if he needs a battery? Okay, so you're aligning business strategy with the organizational culture and the external environment. Culture and the external environment. So there are, again, a few interventions. You have interventions like mergers and acquisitions. Okay, are interventions that involve creating new entities that add value. Okay, that add value to the company. Okay, and this value add, okay, the value add can be in the form of economies of scale, access to resources, market penetration, and so on. Yeah, you can think of many things. You can even think about financial synergies, because you become bigger, it's easier for you to borrow from the capital markets. There are many reasons for mergers and acquisitions. You have to know what the company is lacking. All right, the interventions, the interventions can also focus on many issues, but are often used to help organizational members to assess their company's strengths, weaknesses, and opportunities, and threats. Okay, like your SWOT analysis, yeah? So we do all those things. Okay, opportunities and threats. So you may have studied SWOT. So this is part of it. And use this assessment, as a basis for a better vision for the future. So strategic intervention starts with an analysis. You have to look at the company, you have to look at what the opportunities out there, what are the threats out there, what is your strength, what is your weaknesses. My experience has been most people cannot explain their weaknesses. Most people cannot explain the threats. But those two are the most important, strength and opportunities, people can always talk a lot about it. But if you can honestly explain the weaknesses and honestly do an assessment of the threats, you can come up with a better vision for the future. All right? So you can have strategic interventions such as strategy mapping. So strategic intervention such as strategy mapping involves using things like using the balanced scorecard. If you know what the balanced scorecard is, you can go and Google it. You will find the balanced scorecard to help strategy development, communication or communicating this to those involved, and monitoring its implementation. So the balanced scorecard can be used for that. Now let me ask you this question. Who developed the balanced scorecard as a strategic intervention? Anyone has the answer? Who developed the balanced scorecard? Anyone knows? Liu Yining, Ying Zhao, Zhang Shi, Ji Fei. Anyone has the answer? Do not know? Not Sech Wei. Kaplan, the school you're studying in. He's the one who developed the balanced scorecard. And he made a lot of money from it. Actually, two guys, yeah, Kaplan and Norton. But I do not know what happened to Norton. But Kaplan, he went on and he trained people on how to use the balanced scorecard. And this is how he made his money in the US. They teach people how to use a balanced scorecard. But for some strange reason, in Asia, in Kaplan, they don't teach that. They offer degree programs. But their cash cow is a balanced scorecard. Right? That's how Kaplan made his money. Now, you also have, this is the last intervention that I want to talk about. You also have what is known as the trans-organizational development is an intervention that focuses on the creation of beneficial partnerships, such as strategic alliances with other organizations. All right. Now, it is intended to help perform tasks or solve problems that are beyond the capability of one firm. Again, this is an intervention. So we have to know all these things. Again, many different types of interventions. Is it all very clear? Anyone has any questions on any of these things? So I've covered 4 interventions. Now I'm asking you, anyone has any questions? Okay, waiting, Jifei, all clear? Okay, of course I teach you all these things. I teach you what the theory is. Now let's look at how we can apply it. Okay, so this one is not in your book, it's not in your notes, but this is how you use it. So I'm going to start off on a fresh page. I'm going to use my pad. So I'm going to write a few things on the pad. And of course, depending on the questions you ask, it depends on how long it will take. So you have a case study, or you have a company, and you want to make a change. when do you decide to make a change? So let me draw a few things here. So I'm going to draw, let me see here, let me set this up. So I'm going to draw 3 lines, or 2 lines especially. Supposed to be a straight line, but it's difficult for me, so don't forgive me for that. It's supposed to be a straight line. Okay, so I've drawn 2 lines. All right. Okay, I think I asked during the face-to-face class yesterday, when do you make a change? When do you make a change to a company or an entity? I think it was Oxubo who gave me the answer. Oxubo, do you remember your answer? Yes, okay. So when would you make a change? When sales is down, when turnover is high. So Otsubo gave me this answer yesterday when I said, when do you start to make a change? So she says high turnover, people leaving the company. So what I said was, this is a symptom. This is what you see. This is what happens or what you see. And this is what we call outputs. This is the output. All right. So in her case, I'm mapping it out. Yeah. Usually what I do is I like to map it out. I usually carry a notebook with me. And when things, if I see something wrong, I see, okay, what am I seeing about this company? So I see the output. So I see, let's use Otsubo's example. I see labor turnover. Labor turnover. It's high. Labor turnover is high. Okay, and when labor turnover is high, it affects a lot of other things. It may affect, your cost goes up because you have to start employing new people, or maybe you have difficulty finding people. So this is the output. So when you look at an organization, the thing you can see is always the output, whether it's sales turnover, labor turnover, maybe morale is low, or people are not working, or people are just spending time on the internet when they should be working, meaning that they're not motivated. Okay, this is what I conclude based on the output. But I also need to look at the other parts of the organization. So there are other parts like the inputs. What goes into the organization? And what kind of transformation takes place in the organization? And you can use this model to analyze any organization. So we have transformation and we have inputs. This is how you analyze. But please don't draw this diagram in the report. You have to explain. Why do you think it's labor turnover? Do you have any evidences from the case? Or if you think sales is low, do you have any evidences from the case? You have to explain it. You usually start with the output. Once you have started with the output, you look at what is coming into the organization. So maybe you have to look at potential employees. Potential employees come into the organization. So you're looking at the labor market. Is the labor market very competitive? Or is the labor market, it's a buyer's market, meaning that as an employer, I can find workers easily because there are lots of people in the market who are potentially employable. Okay, so it's a buyer's market. I was reading maybe yesterday or maybe today, I can't remember, like youth and unemployment in China. It's very high, Do you know what's the youth unemployment in China? It's a potential time bomb. When young people are unemployed, it causes problems. Why? They have lots of energy. And usually when young people are unemployed, crime goes up. There's a lot of scams because they have nothing on their mind, but they want to live a good life. So we are looking at the labor market. So now we are looking at labor market. Piao Jindan says it's a buyer's market. What else? In Singapore, you look at immigration.
干嘛？
Okay, I hope when you come in, I hope you switch off your mic, yeah? I don't have to do it, I hope, Okay, in Singapore, we have immigration. Our policies are such, that we welcome immigrants to come and work in Singapore. Nothing wrong with that. But unfortunately, the companies who are here, they take in immigrants because they are willing to work for a lesser salary than Singaporeans. So you have this. So these are the inputs. Let's stick with this. Now look at the company. So when we talk about transformation, we are looking at the internal workings of the company. Internal workings. We are looking at the inputs, all these things coming into the company, and then you see high labor turnover. So you can look at a few things. You can look at organizational culture. Maybe I'll use a different color. You can look at organizational culture. What organizational culture would cause high labor turnover? Anyone has any ideas? What kind of organizational culture will result in high labor turnover? Yeah, I know, but what is a toxic culture? What's a toxic culture? Anyone? Okay, so maybe you can say it's self-interest. People don't think about the company. So people think about maybe, let's say, selfish behavior. You only think about yourself. You don't think about your company. Now, when you look at this, now, what kind of strategic intervention can you make here? So this is where you may have to come up with a vision. Vision becomes important. Vision will try to help you to look at, so you're looking at, you may do an analysis and you can say, this is the future, this is what we have to do. And if anyone doesn't buy the vision, you have to probably make them redundant. All right? Yes, but it comes from the vision. Whatever you might say, it comes from the vision, Piao. Whether you want to be ethical or not, you can build that in the vision. If you want to encourage ethical behavior, the leaders must walk the talk. And walking the talk starts with the vision. You have to look at the vision. That is if you're looking at organizational culture, right? If you want to get people to think, and this is a challenge, especially in companies where there is workforce diversity. Remember, I spoke about workforce diversity. You have people coming from different parts of the world working in the company. I told you about this company that I mentioned earlier. people talking in their own language. How do you get them to think like one? My advice was make sure that everyone speaks English. Make sure the performance appraisal reflects on that everyone is talking to everyone, whether you come from the same country or not, in English. This is how you get people to think like one. You all have studied Hofstede, haven't you? Hofstede cultural dimensions. Have you all studied organizational culture? Have you all studied that? Hofstede. Am I talking Greek? Do you all understand what I'm saying? Have you all studied this? Hofstede's cultural dimensions. Yes, no? Okay, you've studied. And what did Hofstede come up with? He came up with individualism, collectivism. He spoke about uncertainty avoidance. He spoke about power distance. He talked about, long-term outlook, short-term outlook. He spoke about, aspirations, achievement, or what he originally called it, feminism and masculinity. But how did he come up with this? A long time ago, in the 1960s, in the 1960s, he worked for IBM. He was a psychologist in IBM. And when he was in IBM, he was tasked to look at why the performances of IBM is different in different countries. And he came up with his 4 dimensions. He said, okay, IBM in Singapore is because, they don't like certainty. They are uncertain avoidance culture. If I go to Japan, it's collectivistic. If I go to the US, it's individualistic. And that's how he came up with this cross-cultural dimensions. And by selling that idea to companies, again, he, like Kaplan, made a lot of money just coming up with that theory. And that theory can be used to create a vision. Do you want an individualistic culture or do you want a collectivistic culture? If you have an individualistic culture, it becomes a very competitive environment. So this is how you analyze it. This is how you use a theory to explain some of your interventions. But this is organizational culture. But let's say you want to make a change to structure. What would be problems in structure which would cause labor turnover? Anyone? Anyone? What would be a problem in structure which would cause labor turnover? So now we are talking about a different intervention. It could be a techno-structural intervention in structure. So what problems would be in? Yes, good, Piao. Very good. So it could be a hierarchical structure. Hierarchical structure. So you can intervene here, change this hierarchy structure into a flat structure. So this is a different form of intervention. And what you're trying to do is you're trying to reduce the labor turnover. That's all you're trying to do. You can try to change the organizational culture. And I said it starts with a vision because you said selfish behavior within the organization may cause labor turnover. People might leave. They don't like the culture. So you may have to change that. But if you see the evidence or the data pointing to a very hierarchical structure, now maybe you want to make it flat. So you do a techno-structural intervention here. Again, what you're trying to do is you're trying to improve or reduce the labor turnover. This is what you're trying to do. That's what we are trying to do here. So one, is strategic intervention. The other one, we are doing technostructural intervention. Let's look at process. What would be a problem in process which would cause labor turnover? Anyone? What would be a problem in the process? Anyone? You have to start thinking, this is how you come up with ideas. What would be a problem? Yeah, working processes, anything, performance management, maybe people working in the company, they don't see any career in the company. It's so hierarchical. If you're stuck there for life. Yeah, maybe unclear responsibilities, but unclear responsibilities, Chong. Okay, let's come to that. Yeah, okay, there is a few things which has been raised here. Okay, just hold on for a while. I'll explain one by one. Okay, so when people talk about responsibilities is actually in structure. When you have an appropriate structure, you define the responsibilities very clearly. If responsibilities are not clear, something is wrong with the structure. Okay, now someone spoke about the work is very tedious, right? So when work is very tedious, now it could be, again, a technostructural intervention. It is in structure, simply because the content of work, the work methods, or the division of labor is not there. So what you have mentioned, unclear responsibilities and work is tedious, tend to fall under structure rather than process. Okay? Piao, is that clear, Piao? Okay, I hope you understand, yeah? But I'm looking at processes. So processes could be, okay, when the employees come for the interview, remember, nowadays it's a buyer's market. So you take the person who accepts the lowest salary. So we are now talking about incentives. There are no incentives for people to work hard or to perform. They're only there to do the job, the basic minimum. So when they do the basic minimum, when they find a better paying job, maybe even if it pays a little bit more, $100 more, they leave and they go and work for that company. It is about survival, it is about meeting basic needs, security. So when we talk about processes, we're talking about incentivizing people, we're talking about communication, we're talking about leadership, all this, the processes that focus on people and the process by which they accomplish the organizational goals. In this, if the incentives are low, they don't do anything. They just leave it as it is. Okay? They're not incentivized to achieve organizational goals. Now, in this case, how do you improve the process? Maybe you need to look at, for the kind of work they do, what kind of incentives can be offered. This is what you do. So in each of these areas, I spoke about this earlier, here you have strategic intervention. I've given you a list. Here you have technostructural, but you can also have human resource intervention. Here you can also have HR intervention, but you can also have human process intervention. HR, the kind of people you hire. Okay, you want to get qualified people. You don't want to get just the one who accepts the lowest salary. So this is how you intervene. And when you intervene, when you make changes to all this, what you're trying to do is you're trying to change the labor turnover. Over here, the inputs, you can't change. It stays the way it is because that's the external environment. As a company, you can't change the inputs. You accept as it is, but you can only impact what is within the company. This is how you analyze. Okay? Everybody clear? I still have lots of time here. I still have about, I think, about 40 minutes. Anyone has any questions? I thought I'll discuss this with you. Chong Liu, is it clear? Okay, how about the rest? How about any students? I will answer any questions that you may have. Okay, Zhang Shi is clear. Anybody else? All those face-to-face students, are you all clear? Or are you all saving your questions for the next face-to-face session? All right. We have about, well, how much time do we have? We have about 35 minutes, is it? Or 40 minutes. I don't mind taking any questions that you may have. So what I would like you to do is, we can have, maybe as we proceed, we can have more discussion on this. Go and read the case. Okay, but please do not put this diagram in the report. You have to explain. How do you explain? If you say it's labor turnover, why do you say it's labor turnover? What evidence do you have? And if you think the evidence is there, produce a few evidences. Once you have done that, then go to the inputs. All right. So when you look at the inputs, look at the external environment, and these are areas that the company cannot change because these are in the external environment, and all you can do is you have to accept it as a given. Once you've done all this, then spend most of your time looking at the transformation. Okay, where do you think the problem is? So you have to explain. If you think the problem is in the organizational culture, explain it. Remember, we spoke about cause and effect. Okay, can I erase this? Oh, no, I can't erase this. I've saved it. Yeah, so you will see this in the, I'll upload all these documents on Brightspace, so you have a reference. But let me save this. Let me go down. So when you look at these things, I spoke about cause. I think, was it yesterday? I spoke about cause and I spoke about effect. So now what you have here is you have, in this case, labor turnover. So now you have to convince a reader what is the cause. Is it in the structure? Is it in the process? Or is it in the organizational culture? Now, when you do that, you have to provide evidences. Okay, so provide, I'll just write it down, provide evidences of where or what cause, can be causes, can be more than one, is or are. Now, how do you do this? You have to start reading theory, not necessarily management of literature theory. You have to start reading your other theory. I spoke about Hofstede, I spoke about Maslow, I spoke about Kaplan. All these are theories. You have to use a theory to justify to me that this is the cause which is causing this effect. All right? So what you need to do is provide evidences, identify a theory which will explain the cause, okay, which will explain the cause, explain the theory, and then provide evidences. This is how you should approach it. So most of your work will be on the analyzing part. And then once you've done the analysis, once you have done the analysis, what intervention would you use? Now you're talking about the change plan. Outline the change plan. Okay, what intervention do you have to use? Remember, yesterday I spoke about the contingency model. Use the contingency model as a reference to explain your implementation plan. This is how you do it. Is it all clear? Everyone clear about this? Anyone has any questions? This is how you approach the problem. So I'm just teaching you a logical way to do it. This is how I do it. But like I said, I haven't read your case study, because if I start reading your case study, I'll start giving you answers, which I don't want to do, because Rosa said she will take care of that. So probably, she may have a better way. But this is how you analyze. All right, so start reading your case and then start asking, when Rosa comes and talk about all these things, just ask questions, find out the inputs, find out the outputs, you know the transformation, and then ask her, will this cause this or what? And see whether she can give you an explanation. All right. I don't want to read your case study. I will only read it once you've submitted your assignments. I don't want to give you answers. I want you to surprise me with your answers, so that at least when I read it, I'll get interested in how you analyze it. All right, I've come to the end. Anyone has any questions? We have about half an hour more. Any questions, last minute questions? I'll hang around for a while if you have last minute questions. But I think I've given you enough to chew, okay, to chew on, something to chew on. Okay, that's what we say in English, something to think about, something to chew on. Now, those students who come face to face, I think our next class is on 12th of August. Am I correct? Am I correct to say that our next class is 12th of August? There's no class between now and then. Okay, so our next class is a face-to-face, and I'll see you then. But I'll hang around for a while, because we still have about half an hour in case anyone wants to ask questions. But if you don't have any questions, thank you very much for coming this afternoon. It's been a long session. I do not know why. Sometimes I give you a lot more than what is necessary, but I think that is good. So at least you know a lot more than what is in the textbook or is in the slides. Now, when you look at my notes today, it will be slightly different from the slides that you will be seeing, because what you see in the slides I've talked about, and I thought I'll talk about a little bit related to the assignment today. So at least you know how to analyze. So thank you very much for coming. I'll see you on the 12th of August for face-to-face. But of course, you students online, you can always hear me out on 12th of August. And I think 12th of August is a morning class. So we will be meeting at 8:30. So see you then. Take care. I'll hang around for a while in case you have any questions. So goodbye for now until we meet 12th of August. Okay, bye for now, everyone. See you.